Good day. My name is Gorobl러. I was the jury president of the Nami Concours 2023. And what brings us here today is the Grand Prix winner and the Grand Prix book, Lucky Hans. And we have the panel here, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Geeta Wolf. I'm the publisher of Tara북스. We're based in Chennai in South India. And I'm very, very happy to be here. So many thanks to Nami Concours.
I'm Marcos. My nickname is Maguma. I am a Spanish illustrator. I'm very focused on making picture books. And that's it.
Okay. I'm Divya. I'm an editor at Tara북스, and I worked on the text for this book along with Geeta.
I'm Sanjana. I worked on the design of the book, and it was essentially bringing the text and image together.
I remember when seeing this book, when we were in the jury, initially we saw it online, and more of us were really blown away by, and it's an interesting thing, sometimes you just sense that there's something really spectacular here, and only 2 months later did I see the real book. And then even more so, because it's quite complex. Geeta, I want to hear from you. What was it about Maguma? Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that you've worked before, but what quality in him did you see that this guy should really be doing another book for us, and I think a fairy tale? What was you thinking there?
Yeah, when I first met Marcos, I think Valladolid, it was a festival. And I really liked his work. He had shown a couple of, I think you did some cartoons for a newspaper at the time. And this was it was about money and politics, and it was very witty. You know, it had a lot of satire in it, but he had a nice understanding of political economy, and it's rare to bring that lightness. So I remember one of the first things that you asked me, what is witty?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah,
I didn't know he didn't know that word, because that was the wit is what I like in him. And he said, you know, what does that mean in Spanish? And I said, look it up. And then after some time, and you know, we were busy doing other things, and he sees me outside and he says, apropos nothing, I know what it means, thank you. And that was like our first introduction. This is basically what I saw is a very grounded sense of political economy.
But getting it in a manner that could translate into a good narrative, not just economics.
Exactly. I'm just saying the groundedness was there because of all his past experience of doing these cartoons and, you know. So when we invited him to Chennai, the first book we did was this thing called God of Money, which was early writings of Karl Marx about money. I mean, it wasn't very heavy. It was just, and it's something that's alive till today. So something about how far does it get us? What are the pitfalls of it, and so on.
But in a much less sense, was that sort of a classical narrative in a plot, building up to
Yeah, so taking this further, the next time he came, we decided on, this was a story that my editorial colleague and I chose for him, because I think the interpretative qualities of these are tremendous, because you have very little text. And it can go in any direction depending on the images you give it. So it left a lot to the imagination. So it was just a plot that is taking it forward.
But you could sense the possibility of this.
The plot line.
Going much further.
The plot line, and you know, what's really great about making books with good artists and designers is that they just take your vision further. Like you just give the bare bones of something and it turns into something that you're so astonished by that you don't expect. So that's something we enjoy. It's not like you're you've got everything in your head and you have someone do it.
Yes.
You're just waiting to see, and the surprise is great.
And you're touching upon a very interesting thing there,
Yeah.
because you talk about the team and the fact that this one brings this to the end product, the book. In this case, it was collaboration is quite essential
Yeah.
with regards to the development of this book.
Yeah.
And here, I think it would be interesting to hear from all of you this thing, collaboration, because it's not so common in the picture book making environment. Several illustrators never hear or meet the author or the publisher. It's all online. Maguma, what was this collaboration manner of working like for you?
I think that this is what makes the difference, no? Because making a book, it has a lot of similarities with making a film, for example, that also needs a lot of people, no? There are lots of people involved, no? And me as an illustrator, I am not able to do these kind of things by my own, because I don't have all the mediums, no, to do that. So we as an illustrators, we usually work with publishers and with other people, but it's true that usually there is a disconnection, no, between all people, no, involved. And having this opportunity to go to Chennai and work together is amazing, because we can discuss about the process during all the time. No, I remember that we had meetings almost every week. No, so for me it's very nice, because it takes my work to another level.
That's
no,
right.
Yes.
And
So, Divya, did your text come after? I know we work with a story because you work with a classical tale that many people know. We'll get back to that and what it offers us today. But so, did you write the words afterwards?
Yes, I did. And I think that was a big part of the challenge, which was we didn't want the text to distract from the images. We wanted them to almost guide the reader through the image, because he had added so many details. For example, the things that happen to the tertiary characters in the book, right, which is never mentioned in the original story, but he had imagined fates for each one of them.
Yes.
So it was important that the text didn't overshadow the image. It really was very complementary, and that was something we decided early on. And of course, with the second side, because it's much more radical and playful.
You mean the flip side
flip
of the
side, yeah.
Leporello? We'll get to that as well, because I
Yeah.
find that fascinating too.
Yeah, there was a chance to be much more experimental with the text and kind of open it out, because they had become familiar with the story once already.
Yeah.
So I think the approach also to both sides of the story were very much related to the image.
Yes. And for you as a designer,
Yeah.
Sanjana,
Yeah.
Sanjana.
So I think that similar to what Divya said, there were already two tones set to each side of the book. So it was important that we kept that in mind while we were going about what we were doing. And I think another really important aspect was that we were working in the same space, which meant that there was a very organic shift from doing the text to the design and working together. It just happened, the collaboration happened very naturally. So I was there when Divya was writing the text. We were both there together when the post-its were being placed in the panels as part of our process, right? And I think that really informed the way that the final placement of text also happened in the final book. So these kind of things are things that you don't realize. But then when you see in hindsight, this is what really helped bring the whole thing together.
But Sanjana, this kind of, the format is totally unusual, right?
Yeah.
Very few books are being made.
Right.
It's such a long book. Is that quite tricky to do on a screen? Because that's how you work, right?
Yes. It was definitely the longest book I had ever worked on. And I'm sure for Marcos as well, he's the one who created the files in the first place. So it's a challenge to illustrate and also a challenge to design, because you're working with such a large format. Yeah. But technically it taught me a lot as well while working on it. And I think also when you work with such a long book, it's also about what kind of an experience are you creating for the reader, right? Because there's the text that comes in plus the illustration. So how do you put them together, keep the attention of the reader, and at the same time, could we use the placement of the text or colors to highlight certain parts of the story, but at the same time not distract from what Marcos had already created?
And then I would assume, considering the unusual format of this book, that in this case one really needs a dummy. Because you cannot see with a bird's eye view the entire book with one glance at your screen. Therefore, this is a classical demonstration of we need a dummy, right?
I was working in digital, all these wide images, and at that time I was in Madrid, and they sent me a dummy copy of the book. The first thing I got surprised, it was the size, because when I opened it, I discovered that it was very, very long, more longer than I expect,
Yes.
And in this case, it's very important to work, as you said, very important to work with a dummy, because there are some parts of the book and the history that you need to think very with attention,
Yes.
In fact, when we made the dummy, we made some important change in the book, in the images, to adapt to the format,
Okay.
So it was very important.
Yes. No, I'm sure. I mean, there's so many layers in this book that I'm not really sure where to start. But since we talk about the format, a concertina, is that one of the layers of meaning in this book? Because there are several. You refer to the fact that you actually were thinking of Maguma because he's proven his skill before with regards to matters that has something to do with money and finances, and then also his wit, and then also his obviously technical artistical skill.
Yeah.
Yes. Is this format important for the telling of this story?
Very important, I think, because when I made the research, we were working with a very famous fairy tale with a lot of illustrated versions, So when I was making the research, I found that too many authors they told the history in only one image, that is a resume of the whole history. So I wanted also to bring this idea on my book, but my book was also very complex. So I couldn't do only one single image.
Yes.
That is one of the reasons we decide to make an accordion book. And it was very nice also because the first one, God of Money, it was also an accordion. So. Two books, they have also a very similar topic. So format is also very, it make a connection between both, And
If I can add, one of the things about why it's necessary, it's because it's a journey as well.
I was thinking
So
that.
there's visually there's a path that leads you.
mm-hmm.
This is the road he's taking. You can use it as a metaphor or as a visual thing.
Yes.
And similarly in the back, in the flip side, the path is not so clear,
Yes.
because you go in through the tunnel, you come out, you emerge,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
there is a certain progression, and I
Yes.
think that, and I also think when you open the whole thing, there's that effect.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
The bird's eye view.
You could see the book.
Yeah, you're right on the the classical side.
Yeah.
We know the story
Yeah.
and it's a journey, but the other side we are slightly out of our depth,
Yeah.
right? What's
Yeah.
going to happen here?
Yeah.
Because that's where I suppose your
Yeah.
take really comes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do with this classical
Yeah.
tale to make it relevant for our day and age?
Mm-hmm. No, I was only saying that these two points of view of the history fits very well also with the accordion, no? Because an accordion had two faces also, no? So it was a very, very nice way to do it.
But challenging from a technical or a practical viewpoint, because you had to keep so many things in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I was also even thinking, Gita, you talked about this journey, because the man goes on a journey. And you might even tell our viewers what the story is briefly.
Yeah, so briefly the story is, many people know it. It's this boy, it's really a boy in the original story, young man who sets out from home. It's a typical coming of age kind of thing. So you're growing up. His mother sends him out into the world and he works hard. He earns something. And after 7 years, he decides to go back home. And along the way, he meets these various people. So the first time he's got this gold, he exchanges it for a horse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first one's a horse. And the person convinces him that, this is a good thing. You need this. You'll go faster.
Yeah.
So the horse, but what happens is the horse turns out to be lame. And then as he's going, he meets another person and so on. He keeps exchanging what he has for something you can immediately, the reader sees as possibly of lesser value.
Yes.
Like, you get a lame horse, then you have a cow who doesn't give milk, you have a goose, and so on, so on, so on. And in the end, he's left with a stone, a grindstone.
So in business terms, he's losing out.
He's losing out. He's losing. And then you have this stone, which is literally a symbol of, what? You're carrying this heavy millstone around you. And then it falls into the river. Now, the funny thing is, in the original story, he says, I'm free at last.
Yes.
And then he goes home to his mother. So for me, it was like, what does this even mean? Like, is this a foolish man who's making bad exchanges? He's meeting evil people and he has bad luck? Or is he very wise? And more than that, it's a question of what does it mean to exchange something for something? And it was set in a period where money was coming in slowly from a barter economy where you trade things for things. So the question then in a lot of people's minds is, how much is my thing worth? How much will I pay for it? So is it a question of what it means to me at this point? Do I need a glass of water more than I need? So it's like that. So it's a question of value.
In other words, not so much about inherent value, but attached
perceived value. So this is a period of time when this was really an issue. So that was really it. So there were so many layers of meaning, and then you have interpretations which say he's actually really wise because he's got rid of everything and he's free and he goes home. There are other interpretations that say that he's foolish and he's kind of duped by everybody he
Idiot
meets.
who's just
a
loser.
Loser. So that's the interesting thing here about the story. And it has to be interpreted. And, classics are something that every generation interprets.
Yes.
That's why it's a classic.
That's why it's a classic.
Yes, it's a story.
I suppose that's why we remake this book so often, why publishers think, okay, perhaps there is a time for another one of the old ones.
That's right. So it has different meanings. So if I can quickly finish with the introductory part of it, why it is the way it is. The original story, the title is Hans im Glück. Glück in German can mean luck or it can mean happiness. It can mean both. So when it was translated into English, they chose the word luck. And over a period of time, that's what it's come to mean, like fortuna. Things that happen to you. So you have good luck or you have bad luck. So your agency is not there. So if you think of it as happiness, maybe he's very happy to have got rid of everything. Or maybe the guys who took it from him are very happy. Who knows? So there is all that. Yeah. So this is about material things. It's about money. And in today's world, it's things are much more virtual. And they are just numbers, and you don't even see what are you getting. So it's a question of what is happiness. So the next interpretation for the 21st century is when materiality is now not the issue. It's a question of happiness, and it's a question of what is promised to you online. Right?
Yes.
Like you go on,
And that's where your interpretation of the flip side comes in.
That's the flip side.
So what was your thinking there? How am I going to respond to this classical story? What shall I do? What was your thinking there?
Well, as Gita said, there was this history brings too many interpretations, no? And I think this history is important in our moment because even when our world is not as materialist as that world, that ancient world, we give very importance to the economic value of things, no, in our society, because we are we see money as God, no? So
reference to your previous work.
yeah.
So it's the game aspect of it. How is that important? Who of you came up with that idea?
That was
Divya
me.
did.
What is your thinking there, the link between that and the
Yeah.
classical idea?
So, like Geeta and Marcos had said, time is also a very important aspect of the story, right? In the classical version, Hans perhaps is wise, but not in his time, which is why you displace him, and there's a new potential to see his actions. So when I was looking for a way to represent that, I actually came across the format of the Choose Your Own Adventure book, which, interestingly enough, the creator had pitched it to different publishers in the 1960s, and everyone said this makes no sense.
Really?
No one wanted it. And then 20 years later, he pitches it again, and this is with the rise of neoliberalism in the US, right, where everyone's a consumer. And it's actually pre-computer still. Everyone thinks it's very linked to the technology, but it was still ahead of that. And suddenly that language, the idea of children, readers being consumers, the language of advertising, right? Like it takes on the second person you make this choice.
This idea of having choices
Exactly.
in every regard.
Yeah, that you're free to make your choices even if they're destructive.
Except that, as you say in your book, you have to make choices only within this framework.
Yeah, the choices are presented to
The rules are
you.
set.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
not like
You're not really free.
Yeah,
You have
exactly. So the idea that even this narrative, which was hugely popular, it sold millions and millions of copies, but it needed to find its time to become relevant. I thought that's perfect, right? Because the aesthetic of it, the most well-known representation of it is the digital video game format, but it's actually older, and it really needed its time to make sense. It was ahead of its time, maybe like Hans was. So I thought there was a lot of potential there to play with that, and because the illustrations were already in place, we could present the choices, but on each instance, the choice was already made.
Sanya, were you also involved in this process of how it will be constructed, the view of the second part?
Yeah, so I was like around for the discussions. We were having some of these discussions together. And I was also there when, Divya had the idea of the Choose Your Own Adventure books. So I didn't wait to get started on the design of it. I started doing research immediately because it was a very exciting idea. And a lot of research actually went into how to best represent this idea of being in a game or, being given these choices because it's such an interesting tool to use. So one of the things that we looked into was the 8-bit style or pixelated style of or treatment, and that is something that is both retro and futuristic. It's something people can relate to and they can recognize. It's widely recognized. So we explored many different ways of doing this. Since Marcos's work is so spatial, one of the ways we initially tried to do it was by having the text boxes and dialogues in 3D within the illustration. So in that way it becomes a part of the illustration. But we felt that this treatment of having it in 2D, but still having a separation between the dialogue and the choices, and then heightening this sense of, not having a choice or having to make a choice quickly with the glitching of the text boxes was again to just, show more or to highlight more the fact that he doesn't actually have a choice.
Yes.
So,
And we did talk about the fact that the visual language should go on its own.
Yes.
So initially we were thinking of placing the text up where the visuals are, up on the skyline kind
Yes.
of.
Okay.
And that kind of, we didn't want to interfere with,
Yes.
leave the visual language for what it is,
Yeah.
and take
Yeah.
and keep this separate, right? That was
And
a discussion.
also, you know, in the side 1, which is the traditional side, we have placed the text very traditionally at the bottom.
Yes.
And in the second side, just like Marcus has, you know, and the text also changes in the second side, even the placement of the text is different over there. So try to keep that tone going in both sides. Yeah.
Now you can imagine the surprise, slight perplexion in a jury, because what we have is 5 images from each entry. So you have, okay, this looks like a spread a journey. You immediately got that from the horse. And then all of a sudden you get these images, to the extent that some of us think, is this jarring? And then you read the synopsis that you gave, which was quite good, and clearing it all up. Yes, that's the whole idea. Something is jarring, and it's totally a different way or retelling of the story, which, it's just brilliant. And I think part of its charm for me also is the way you made the images. Because they are clearly, some of them reminded me a bit of Bruegel. You know, the Bruegel-esque European landscape, in which we associate the European landscape with the Grimm fairy tales very often. Then it's so contemporary as well, because you see flat colors, you see graphic elements like we have on the, I love the cover, you know, these rays, these golden rays coming from the gold. So this combination of really the old and the reference to that, the nod to that, but making it very contemporary. Your visual language is quite recognizable. I have to say, when I looked on the website, I saw your sketchbooks and I thought, oh goodness, these are also so beautiful. They would have made a lovely book themselves, because your sketchbooks are really lovely. But then you took it there. So the flat colors, are they typical Maguma approach to image making, your coloring?
For me, it's very important working with color. I'm very interested in this area, no? And during all these years, I have realized that when you work in a original artwork and then it's printed, colors change a lot, no? So
mostly you're disappointed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I discovered that when you work with few colors, it's easier to control this difference between original and printed, no?
Yes.
So that is why I decided to work only with 5 colors.
Yes.
That is why my sketchbooks, they are all handmade and a lot of different colors, but then I make the choice of make flat colors and only a few colors.
Yes.
And then this gave us the opportunity to print using direct Pantone colors, no? So it brings brighter colors also to the book.
And of course, it immediately gives a sense of something contemporary.
Yes.
Classical tale, but for this day and age. As you've reinterpreted the message or showed us how it could be read, so with the visuals. There were other bits that I was very curious about. How you did that? Was that acrylic? I mean, I could see the stripes of the paint there.
Yeah.
I think many of our viewers are actually illustrators, or people are quite interested in technique. And what did he actually do?
Well, this happens mostly in the first part of the book, no? Because I tried to do 2 different styles, no? But in this first part, there are a lot of texture, no?
Yes.
So I use too many materials, like acrylics, but also pencils, crayons, and I work in every shape separately. I use a light table to have some references, and then I scan everything. I make a transformation of the shapes to have the possibility of change their colors, and then I put all together. And this method brings me the opportunity to continue developing the image, working on the image, even when I have had some sketch before. but the image continue moving, no? Because it's very easy to move elements in digital. No?
And I suppose that keeps you as an illustrator interested as well, because it's not so clear how it's going to go. It develops a life of its own, this illustration process, and you get surprises here and there.
Yeah, that's the point. No, I like very much this sensation of being surprised myself all the time.
Yes. No, it's fascinating. There were even elements that some of us thought, you know, the hat of that man, this from Japan, is it references, and in a strange way, the way the lands, it does remind me a little bit of Japanese painting even.
Yeah.
So you get this weird idea, which I suppose is very good for the concept, that it's really universal.
It is.
You know, even with regards to its visuals.
Yeah, and not in a clumsy way.
No,
It's so subtle that you don't, sometimes you forcibly bring elements together and it looks like things are like a pastiche.
Yes.
Things have been put together, but not here.
Yes.
Yeah.
You create a world that is only the world of this story.
That's right.
Yeah, but this is fairy tales, no? When we think in fairy tales, we imagine these fantastic worlds, no?
Yeah.
So that was my challenge here,
Yes.
no?
Yes. So fairy tales, dreams. What are you? Is this team? Are we going to see more of you? Are there dreams and plans for working more with these thematics, or this method of working?
If I may, we just want to be surprised by ourselves, like you said.
Oh.
So, speaking personally, I just don't know what's around the corner.
Yes.
It depends. Now, meeting Marcos led us into this. Meeting other people, it's the energy that other people bring into our lives, and so essentially, I think publishing is an act of generosity towards other people's talent. It just has to be, because
A good publisher, right?
it has to be like, what can this person do, and suddenly, thematically something strikes you, and then it takes you to place, and the interest and the energy you have is due to the surprise element.
Yes.
So it's very hard to say what it will be,
Yeah.
but we'd like to continue. Anyway, you're going to come again.
Yeah.
And we have a plan for the next the next book with Marcos. Yes,
Okay. And
for
you,
sure.
as author, Divya and Sanjana, you're looking forward to something, to continue this kind of collaboration. Was it really a thrill for you too?
Yeah, I think it was a huge learning experience, but it was also so much fun.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think this is what I love about publishing, which is that we're all working together in service of the book.
Yep.
Whatever anyone brings to the project, ultimately it has to be a cohesive thing that readers can make sense of and keep with them for a long time to come.
Yes.
So whether it's on the editorial side or writing, it's always great to just work together on it.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, I love being part of this process of telling a story, especially a story that makes you think or gets you to reflect on, the world or yourself. And I think that's really special. And also I feel like now, especially with regards to design, there's so much talk about experience design, right? Everyone talks about digital experience design, but a book is essentially an experience. You're designing an experience for a reader. So I think that is something I definitely want to continue to do and create those little experiences and big or little experiences for people.
Yeah.
Very interesting. From all of your responses to the last question, I picked up something which I personally think is quite important, but we could read in different ways. The reader.
Exactly.
Is it relevant when we start with a book to ask who's going to read this? As we all know, booksellers, librarians, they always know what age group, as if that is a clear indicator. Is it of importance for the publisher to know that section of the market is going to buy it and read it? Is it important for the artist to think, okay, I have to, maneuver this creation of mine so that it would fit the appetite of a what? I don't know, what is a typical 5-year-old or a typical 8-year-old? Is there such a thing as an ideal reader? And does it matter?
It's a wonderful question, because we've never paid enough attention to it, I think, because for one, I think the ideal reader is ourselves. We essentially make these books because we love them. Then comes the thought who. Now, in the question of fairy tales, and like most, it was oral. All oral traditions is for anybody who listens. It's like a child would be in the audience, an older person, and you make of it what your experience allows you to. So children will see a different story, older people will read more meanings into it, and that's essentially oral traditions.
Yes.
So here I would say all ages. Kids will get something out of it. Older people will think perhaps differently. So in this case, it's clear. As to your other question, I think there are some books perhaps that we think of purely as children's books. And there the question is not the age, but a communication. Say, is this word too hard? And there we're of the opinion that we routinely underestimate kids. They'll get it.
Yes.
And even if they don't get it the first reading, it'll be the second, third, fourth. So you don't have to really dumb down things for kids.
Yeah, age is a bit of a clumsy category.
It is a very
isn't it?
clumsy category, and we find ourselves tripping on it the whole time.
Yes.
This one is definitely for all ages.
I believe so.
Yeah.
What is your view as an artist?
Yeah.
You're going to make an artwork for...
I usually, not only in this work, I usually like to show my work to everybody, not only children, not only adults. So I am always making the effort to construct different layers visually, no? And it's very, very nice working with images, because early reader maybe he or she doesn't know how to read a text, but images are very easy to read, no? I think it's an universal way of telling histories, no? And I think I don't like very much this idea of putting ages into boxes, no? Because sometimes when we do this, we also tend to think that we have to make histories softer or easier or
cuter,
sweeter. And sometimes we forget that children, they are also smart, no?
Yes, and they're different. It's
Yeah.
not like a child. Like you have some children who,
exactly.
who like absurdity. There are some children who like adventure. Although I have one thing to say with very young children, I think it's quite important to kind of go by what they know. In the sense, you can't have a joke or play on something without knowing the original thing.
Right.
Like, no, you can't, for example, take an apple and say, this is a pear, and the child will laugh if the child knows this is not a.
Yes, exactly.
So you've got to be a little bit sensitive to how much they understand, so that they know that when you're saying it is not this, that it's a joke.
Yes.
So there,
and I think thereby comes this whole idea of layers of meaning.
Yeah.
So on the surface we have a picture
Yeah.
that all of us can see.
Yeah.
But how many of us understand the next layer of
Yeah.
meaning and get your references to money, and we see this journey and all of that, which makes it complex. Are you very aware of who's going to read it, that question, the ideal reader, as author and designer?
So something that's special, I think, also to the process of how we work at Tara is that while marketing decisions might not change the book, editorial definitely plays a huge role in how we market the book, which means that we, as people who've worked on the content, we think it's important to frame the book for our readers. Not necessarily change the book to fit a niche, but create a space for readers to engage with what we've done with the book. So that's why we do the blog post. That's why we reach out to
Yeah, and to an extent, that's why those 2 introductions are there. Take it or leave it.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
You can read it
you
without it.
want
Yeah.
it, you'll probably relish the book much more.
Yeah.
Then you get this bit of history, which will deepen the experience, or leave it. You get it even otherwise. So it's just a choice.
Yes.
That's why it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the joys of, having a book over many years and reading it is that you get to, it's something we've discussed before, but you get to revisit the book over years and as you get older, and each time you discover something new, discover a new layer of meaning, and that's also something very special.
I would really like to congratulate your team, because this book can be enjoyed on many levels, but for me in the end it's also really an art book.
Yes,
it's a
it
work of art.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, bravo.
And that's why we...
Bravo.
yeah.
It's really splendid and something quite unusual. I think, I know, one of the best picture books that I've held in my hands.
Oh.
The context of our talk is Nami Concours, Nami Island. Maguma, for you, this experience of receiving this prize for this book, is it significant for you as an artist?
Of course it is. No? We are speaking about an international contest, and you see the quality of the works. So for me, it's very, very important to receive this prize, no? And I think it has a lot of relevance. We were talking yesterday about the relevance in Nami here in Korea or outside, but I think outside, at least, is very popular. This contest.
Well known. Yeah.
Well known
And highly regarded.
Highly regarded too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Experience for you coming from India to the island, was it good with your publishing house being involved in this moment of glory, if I can put it like that?
Yeah, sure. It's great because we're kind of the background material to this, and he's the one who's carried it off in that sense. So it was just amazing to see where it could be, and it's also very gratifying that it deserved the kind of commentary and recognition that it has.
Yeah.
And everyone's very happy when you get the book. Like when you have your ideal reader, or say here the members of the jury said this is what it's about. So it's wonderful if you think it's communicated in the way you want it.
Yes.
It's been a
Good.
remarkable
And the time
experience.
here
The time.
was that you enjoy the island
What-
and the Nami experience.
What can we say? Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
And seeing the exhibition and seeing how they just brought Hans to life.
That was quite something
yeah,
for me as well.
quite
To see,
something.
wow, look what they did
Yeah.
with it. How did they present it in yet another picture book format, but on a wall in a room,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah,
Quite
I think that was beyond anything we could have
Yeah.
imagined. It was just
One is the island, and I would like to say the other is the hospitality and care and warmth that we received. I mean, I would like to mention that.
yes.
That
So generous.
one is so very generous,
Yeah.
very generous.
Which this book is also a generous book. I think you're being generous to the readers, whoever they are, whoever might like to pick up the book and have the journey with it, on this journey of poor old Hans. No, lucky old Hans. Not
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah,
Poor, happy,
lucky Hans.
lucky Hans.
Yeah.
But I think, in your portfolio, a splendid book. And I think in the portfolio of Nami Concours and Nami Island. Wonderful to have this book.
So I think we'd like to thank Nami for their
Yeah.
hospitality and the generosity and being there, and to you.
Well,
Pete.
thanks for this book that brought us
Yeah.
all together at this table.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you think we can reveal our new project, or maybe we keep it
reveal
secret?
it.
Now I'm starting a new project that is about a real history. That is the first climbing of Chimborazo. That is a big mountain in Ecuador. That when it was climbed, it's supposed to be the biggest mountain in the world. And the climber was Humboldt.
Oh yeah, Humboldt. Okay. So that we can look forward to something, a mountain story, a mountain climbing story, adventure.
But one thing we will study for sure is the format of the book.
Yes.
Because I think in general we are very interested in working with formats and use format to...
Meaningful format that has meaning in itself.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. And
Which is very
yeah,
great.
Yeah, which it's not just for the sake of it.
Yes, it's not a gimmick.
No.
It has meaning. One of those layers. Zip.